Thanks, Kavitta ji, for having me. This is so exciting.
Thank you, Pratham. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. And really, it's my honor to have you here.
No. Thank you so much for your time. And I believe you're also meeting later tonight for a
Yes,
dinner.
yes, we
Friend's
are.
birthday.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. And I
It's,
look forward to a happy evening together.
the only thing is that they require a black tie or a tuxedo, and I don't have one.
I'm sure I can't imagine seeing you in a tuxedo. It'll be a pleasant sight.
And no, since morning, everyone in my home, we've been trying to figure out how to iron all the old winter clothes and try to get a tuxedo going.
I know.
But do you enjoy these social events in Delhi?
Actually, I prefer deep, meaningful conversations, but I also love the big parties.
You
So
do.
I like a bit of both. I know you are more comfortable in a smaller setting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I quite like the razzmatazz of the big
Yeah.
gatherings
But
also.
is it, to be honest, it's a guilty pleasure. My 60% of my motivation is for the food. Because generally everyone my mom makes me eat at home every day.
Yeah.
And this is my time to mix it up a little bit.
But tell me something. I mean, it's really good to see you really fit. What do you do for your fitness?
I think I really don't do a very good job of working out. I maybe work out once or twice a week. That's it, right? And that also for half an hour. And that also like a light workout. I think till now, because of my age, my genes are supporting me, right? You've met my mom.
Yes,
So,
I
but I think over a period of time, if I don't take care of myself, this gift is gonna go, I think.
Okay, yes, I think as we all realize the value of health, the value of learning new things. In fact, on learning, I am so enamored by what you have set up. So let's
Thank you.
talk a bit about Masters Union.
All right,
Tell me
awesome.
about your founding journey. Tell me what were the gaps that you saw that made you think like this to create a program at Masters Union?
Yeah.
And for all of us out there who don't know what it's about, tell us a little more about it.
Sure. So, I was very fortunate to go to the best high school in the country, right? The Doon School. I believe it's the best, right? Then I got very lucky to even go to an Ivy League college, right? UPenn. But throughout my experience, I always felt that there were two or three things lacking in my education. One is that I always felt that whatever I was learning in the classroom was actually completely useless in the real world, right? And I know we've had this conversation many times
Yes.
that the syllabus is old.
Yes.
The way the teachers teach is not really that engaging,
Yes.
and whatever they're teaching is so that we can pass an exam, but not really pass the exam of life, right? And I always thought that as a student, that one day I will start a college where the learning will be completely related to the real world.
Okay.
It'll be rooted in the real world. It'll be about the real world. It'll be a simulation of the real world. Uh, and that's how the idea for Masters Union came in. And the way you can't learn swimming by reading a book,
Right.
I really believe that you can't learn a skill by reading a book alone.
Yes.
You have to go inside the water to learn how to swim.
Yes.
You have to build your own business
Yes.
to learn business.
Yes.
You have to do a podcast like this to get better at podcasts.
Yes.
There's no way to do it theoretically. So that's the idea for Masters Union.
Yeah. I so resonate with what you're saying. With just a slight tweak. I think the education system in this country, for the numbers that it caters to, does a good job of education at a certain level,
Absolutely.
right? At a basic foundational level. But yes, I think there is this whole need that you've said that you need to get your hands dirty. You need education to reflect what is happening in the real world. And that's a real gap in the system. In fact, that's the reason I started Head Start Mentorship.
Correct.
Right? And I realized that while college students, some of the brilliant ones like you who go to the best schools and the best colleges in the world, they somehow get it. But there is a vast majority of students who need, by the time they get to grade 11 and they get into that mad race of deciding which stream, which college, it's often too late.
Yeah.
And so it's so
The
important.
damage is done.
Yeah, so it's so important that you start with foundational skill building at an earlier age, and which is what Head Start Mentorship does.
Correct.
We work with students as young as class 7, and then we go up till grade 10. And then we get the base. So whether it's, exposing them to what their passions are, whether teaching them how important research is and what is the right way
Whatever
to do
they
it.
don't learn in school,
Whatever
what
they
they should
don't.
learn.
Yes.
is where you come in.
Well, I'd say it's not about should or don't. I think it's more about supplementing what they are learning. Right? And I feel that today the need to have real world programs. So, in a way, preparing them for universities like Masters Union
Or life in general. I
or
mean,
life in
like,
general.
it's.
Absolutely.
But tell me one thing. I feel like the education system in India or globally, and more specifically India, like CBSE, ICSE, HSC, they really prepare students for hard work.
Yes.
We have to put in a lot of hours,
Yes.
right? And we
Yes.
get good at sitting in one place
Yes.
for 6 hours at a stretch and finishing a mock paper or
Yes.
back of the book questions or whatever it is. But when it comes to critical thinking or when it comes to expression or when it comes to innovation, I think that's where the education system slightly fails us, right?
Yes.
And by the way, we have to give the education system the credit that they are teaching 50 crore students
Exactly.
probably,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
So it's still doing a great job.
Yes.
But these are the few. So talk a little bit about these three things, right? And how Head Start, how you have sort of uh, come to discover how students can be supplemented.
I think if I look at the top 5 skills that I as a parent would want a student to have, I as an entrepreneur would look for a student to have, or I as an industry person would want a
An employee,
student to, and somebody who's going to be able to give a job to someone. I would want them to be looking at something that I've coined a term called anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility. Okay.
So, we as a country, we like to protect our children.
Correct.
Our mark system tries to give them grace marks. We are all looking for that A grade. So we have to get past this anti-fragility momentum. We have to make them mentally equipped.
Anti-protectionist, essentially.
Yes.
Throw them in the wild.
Yes. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is.
No, I want to talk a little bit more about anti-fragility.
Sure.
So let's say like my parents would always make sure that I have these extra tuitions
Yes.
that I go to
Yes.
in case I don't understand something
Yes.
in school.
Yes.
Is that part of anti-fragility as well?
So I feel that comes from a bigger initiative that is needed to train the teachers. Once our teachers are teaching at an optimum level, the need for after school tuitions will sort of go away.
Hey, but is that concept of having our kids do extra classes part of anti-fragility? That you protect them too much?
Yes, that is part of making them too fragile.
Making them too fragile, right?
Yes.
Right.
So an anti-fragility movement will say, let's use technology to teach them what they don't know versus getting them yet another tutor.
Another class.
Yes.
Got it. So making them fragile as in making them more sensitive or more fragile. I mean,
Yes.
there's not a better word than that.
Yes. The second term I like to use is we need to stop bubble wrapping our children. As parents in our culture, it is to get everything right for them at the first go. As a result, when they step into college, later years, life, we all know when we try different things, we succeed at some and we fail at some.
Correct.
But we don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with that failure the way some other cultures have. So I think this is more a parenting exercise. And also in our culture, in our society, success or failure of a child gets reflected very strongly on the parent. So they don't allow children to experiment, to try, to win, to not win, because it's almost a statement on their own parenting.
Got it. Yeah. They take it too personally.
Yeah.
A child's failure is my failure.
Yeah.
As a parent.
Yeah. So I think this little mindset education has to come not just for children, but for parents also.
I mean, you must have seen so many parents in your network and, of course, kids. Give me some examples of how you've seen bubble wrapping in real life. Like what kind of like stupid things you've seen people do?
I'm actually the first person who takes the blame for bubble wrapping my own daughter. And I continue to do it. So while it's very easy to have all these theories and talk about these concepts, you really have to unlearn what you know to learn new techniques. And I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to people from different cultures as parents. I've been exposed to people with different mindsets. And so, as you always, if you are open to continuous learning, you do learn that even, there are mistakes that you have made as a parent. I won't call them mistakes, it's just a style of parenting. But maybe there is a better way to teach them how to succeed in the real world by not bubble wrapping them so much.
Got it. So it's like when we, I think tutoring again is one of those
Yes.
things, but also don't watch TV post 9, don't watch this channel, parental controls on mobile phones.
That's a tricky one, Pratham, because discipline is important. And what has happened is that while awareness has increased, education opportunity has increased, exposure has increased, but then the same social media has content of all sorts. And self regulation is something that comes with time. So that's when I think parenting needs to step in.
So up to a certain
step in.
age, bubble wrapping is okay. I mean, of course, when they're toddlers, we obviously bubble wrap them like literally.
Yes.
And then, so this is very interesting. So, how, to what level should bubble wrapping decrease? Like every year as students, as kids grow?
I think by virtue of you being a parent, that last layer of bubble wrapping never goes away for
Fair,
your children,
fair.
right? But I feel this need to not to constantly control what's happening to them so that they don't fail is a mindset that needs to change in the Indian parenting setup.
In the first few years is required, like as you
Yes.
said, to build discipline,
Yes.
so that they don't get carried away when they don't have
Yes.
good decision making.
Yes.
But when do you see, at what age do you see kids being able to?
Ideally, in high school is when students should be allowed to make their own choices, to make their own mistakes, to make their own decisions. If they don't want to take STEM subjects and they want to study to become a chef, that should be okay, right? But you'll be surprised in the highest echelons of Indian society, in the most educated parents, it's still an issue. It's still, subject choices are still an issue. And that's something we do at Head Start Mentorship, where we actually talk to both students and families. Where if a student does not want to walk the STEM path or does not want to walk the business path, coming from a business family, wants to study something else, you actually often have to become that bridge
Between the parent and
between
the
the parent and the student and kind of reach a middle point where it's acceptable to both.
Are you mostly successful at these bridging conversations?
Yes.
More often than not?
More often than not. More often than not.
Wouldn't
yes.
have worked at my home, I'm telling you that. Interesting. Do you think that when there is so much fragility that we're building into our children, or when we're bubble wrapping them so much, that their decision-making skills later in life also suffer?
It's not just a thought, it's actually proven. So if you do, if you take a psychometric test, which tests the emotional quotient of a child, most often you will see decision making capability in that psychometric to be the lowest count there is in the test, simply because decisions are being made by others for you.
And then when these kids will grow up and when they'll have their own kids, right? Then what will happen? Then, like, if they can't make decisions for their kids.
No,
Have you seen that loop?
I haven't yet seen the cycle repeat itself. But what happens is we are so conditioned by our upbringing, by our education system, by our experiences, that often those cycles run for generations.
Got it. It's like, tough times create strong men create easy times create weak men.
Yes.
And then weak men create
Yeah, it's fairly
tough
cyclical.
times.
Fairly
It's something like
cyclical.
this. Interesting. Okay. So there's anti-fragility, there is bubble wrapping. What's the third one?
The third one I would say is discipline. So discipline is needed both in terms of how you conduct yourself. Discipline is also needed for perseverance of whatever it is that you choose to pursue. And discipline is also needed in the general way that you conduct yourself in life.
Do you find kids to be less disciplined now than they were before?
I think the definition of discipline has changed in the society.
Okay, interesting.
Simply because what is acceptable as indiscipline has also changed in society.
Like having a girlfriend, boyfriend at the age of 14 is a little bit more acceptable, I feel, today.
That's that's one ratio. I think there are other things that have sort of become, as society's got more exposure, they've got a lot of things which were in our tradition, in our culture, have sort of got influenced by other sources. So what is acceptable and normal now has definitely changed how it was even say 15 years ago.
No, but So coming back to whether discipline has decreased or increased, given the traditional definition of discipline, which is, you know, uh, putting your head down and working 6 hours when you need to.
Yes.
If you're a sportsman, then actually
Yes.
showing up in the morning and in the
Yes.
evening and
Yes.
having that kind of discipline.
Yes.
Do you think that's fairly constant? Do you think that because of bubble wrapping, it's artificially increased? Do you feel, how do you sort of see it?
So I'd say it's a mix. I'd say the students who are committed, who are wanting success, who are disciplined to do it, are still showing up at 5 a.m. for their swimming practices.
But
or
is that
their
number
soccer
more than it
practices.
was before? Like, as a society, where are we going?
I would say it's on a diminishing
Interesting.
mark versus earlier. Another reason for this is that social media has made success seem very easy. Students today are enamored by all the success stories. So they would look at you and say, you are 30 under 30, right? How many hours? Let me ask you this question for our students listening. So, Pratham, how many hours a day do you work?
See, I think even when I'm showering, the thoughts that I'm going through
Yes.
are related to work. Right?
Right.
So I feel like because I'm enjoying my work,
Yes.
I am essentially working 24 hours minus the 8 hours that I'm sleeping.
Okay. How often do you read?
Um, Long form reading has reduced, very honestly. Book reading has reduced to almost zero.
Okay.
But short form reading on Twitter, if that counts,
Okay.
that would be like an hour or an hour and a half, maybe.
So you're exposing yourself to that many people, that many thoughts, that many ideas on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think I am.
Okay, great. Let me ask you, when you were a student, how many hours a day would you have studied?
I mean, there was nothing else going on in life at that time. So maybe 2 hours of sports, 2 hours of lunch, dinner, TV, etc. 8 hours of sleeping. So then the rest, when I'm in school, obviously it's all learning. And then when I'm at home, maybe 4 or 5 hours.
So that's the point I'm making. But today on social media, you'll be seen as this flamboyant 30 under 30 who's got this everything ready in life. So nobody's listening really to the backstory of the hard work you're continuing to put in every single day, even today, right? So I think discipline from that account is also very important. And a line that I often use with my students is there is the same 24 hours for every student.
Correct.
What you choose to do within those 24 hours decides where you're going to be placed in the ladder of success.
And how do you recommend people spend those 24 hours? Let's say I'm 10 years old.
Okay.
Let's say, right?
Yes.
A lot of the audience here would be parents who have
Yes.
kids in that age group, I'm
Yes.
guessing, right? What is the ideal, from a head start perspective,
Yes.
way to spend your 24 hours?
I would say it's important to spend quality over quantity. So I'm going to say some of the things that students should do every day without putting sort of a time to it. The first is read. So whether you read on digital media, whether you listen to a podcast, whether you read the newspaper, whether you read a book, read. Be aware of what is going on beyond just your sort of little world. What that does is it gives you knowledge. It also expands your mind to newer ideas that may not be available.
For a 10-year-old, what can he read or she read? Like the newspaper would be hard for them, right? To digest?
No, today news is broken down in audio format, which is so easy to understand, right?
Correct.
Also, expose yourself to as many activities as possible. Do a creative dance, do an art, play a sport, expose yourself to technology. That's the other big one. It's no longer optional to be interested or disinterested in technology. It's going to be the way of the future. It is already the way
Where
of
do you
the
draw the
future.
line? I mean, like if I give a 10-year-old a phone, then it's very hard to take it away from them.
No, so I'm talking about learning about technology.
Okay.
I'm not talking about exposing yourself
Okay,
to
got it.
technology with
Got it.
gadgets.
So would that mean like coding?
So coding is one. So not all students enjoy coding, and that's fine, right? But there are two aspects of technology. One is creating is, one is learning to use it. So make yourself proficient in either one. Because eventually there's no running away from technology. Right? I would also say that in this world today, mindfulness, teaching them mindfulness while they're very young is very important. And it's not just about themselves. It's about the environment, it's about the peer group, it's about the teacher-student relationship, it's about the parental equation. So just making your students more mindful, I think, is important today. And the last thing, learn communication. Written, spoken, how you put yourself out there.
Right.
Even often just asking for a teacher for a delay in classwork depends on how you ask
How you ask for it. Yeah. No, so I agree that these are all the things that are required, but you have to now give me a timetable, right? Because I think as a parent,
Yeah.
I'm not one yet, but I'm going to try and put myself in shoes of parents.
Yes.
We generally don't know how to set up the day for success, right? Like I know that communication is important. I know that exposing kids to activities and technology is important, but how do I now create their day? Like what have you, through your research and working with so many students experience, taught you about crafting a day?
More than a day, I think it's taking large projects and crafting them into achievable goals and objectives and milestones.
Okay.
Right? So let's take communication, for example. I want my child to become a public speaker. What are the ways to do it? A, make them aware so that they learn to craft information in their head. Second, expand their vocabulary. Third, have meaningful conversations with them. As a parent, what they see is what they imbibe, right? Lastly, look for opportunities for competitions that they can participate in. It's not
Got it.
necessary to win every time. It's important to show up.
Got it. Got it. So take up a project
Take
with
up a
an
project.
end goal, like a competition.
Yes.
So like let's say there is a TEDx going on in your
Yes.
school.
Yes.
So if you take that as the target,
Yes.
work backwards from it.
Yes. And from there, look for mentors who can help you achieve this goal. So, if you're part of Head Start Mentorship and you say, I want to take part in a TEDx competition, we would start right at the beginning. Then we would teach you techniques. What would some of these techniques be? Look in the mirror and speak. Record yourself and talk. Practice in front of your parent. Ask your friends to critique you. Simple things, but you go back to the drawing board, do it consistently, and you become successful.
What are some of the mistakes then have you seen parents make? Sometimes parents can get very personal and very attached to that goal, right? And almost put pressure on the child,
Yes.
right? So where do you draw the line there?
It's very important to listen to your student. Hear that is it their aspiration or is it really the parents who's living their own lives, dreams, goals through their
Vicariously, yeah.
child. Yeah. So, and through and and students actually know for themselves, right? And it's your job as mentors, guides, teachers. Sometimes if they are not aware of it, but you see the potential, then you gently guide them in that direction. But also if you see there's a lot of push happening where the student is not genuinely interested in that project, it's not a passion for them, then step in and advise the parents also.
But like, I don't think parents or children, many of my friends, I would, say for them that do they have the right judgment for these kind of things, right? Like, I want my child to become a good public speaker.
Right.
Now, how much of it is about the child, and how much of it is about me as a parent,
Right.
being a tiger parent?
Pratham, I believe the parent truly knows what's right for their own child.
But then they won't have bubble wrapped them, right?
So, bubble wrapping is an instinct where everything needs to be perfect in this Instagram world, right? So, I feel we just need to take a step back from the genuineness of parenting versus the bubble wrapping of our students.
But I think that's where parents don't realize when it's genuinely, when what they're doing is genuinely good for the child, or when it becomes overly protective, right? They cross that line very often.
Yes.
And what you're saying is, I understand that, like, try to listen to the child.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Generally they know when that line is being crossed.
Yes.
What are some of the cues that you should look for, right? Like, do children actually speak out like, oh, I don't want to do this, or sometimes do they just keep absorbing the pressure?
Both happens. Every child is a different personality. So some will be vocal about it, where they will come out and say, mom's pushing me to do this, I don't really want to do this. Others, you can see that a child is getting over anxious about scoring 100 in math, and the parent is quietly looking on. So those are times when you have to have A-side conversations. But at the same time, I'm not a trained psychologist. So there are times when I've had to refer students to trained professionals who need to sort of assess the situation and see if anything more is needed.
Understood. Very interesting. When we are training students here who are much older, right? My students are all 24, 25, 26 years old.
Yes.
Even at this point, I see some of them living in this constant pressure, right? A lot of kids would come and tell me, Pratham, can you please talk to our parents and tell them that I'm doing well in school or in college? And I'm like, no, your grades are speaking for it. They're like, no, 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 but they want to hear it from you. They don't believe me,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, you're 25 years old. You're going to have your own children in 2, 3 years. And still your parents are so protective and they want to check in.
Yes.
We have this program called PGP Rise, where we have students who are above the age of 30
Okay.
as well. Now, even in their case, when the program starts, the parents come and drop them to college.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait, what is happening? Like, let them grow.
Yeah, but the thing is, Pratham, this is also the beauty of our Indian culture. This deep connection that parents and children have. It's not all bad. In the sense, our heritage, our culture gives us this connection. I mean, if you look at some of the other societies, the disconnect happens so early that eventually, as the cycle of life continues, there is so much of loneliness, there is so much of not caring, etc. I feel there's a lot of positive in this connectivity that parents and children have, to be honest.
But then it's a dichotomy, right? Then I feel like while that is a definitive positive, I agree that we have very strong relationships with our parents
Yeah.
and our children. But then the flip side of that coin is that parents are going to be overprotective. They are going to bubble wrap. They are going to make you more fragile.
So I feel now the opportunities that our students have is giving them more exposure, is giving them path to be more innovative. And when you get success, you also get self-confidence. Right? And that self-confidence sometimes makes you more assertive in your relationships. So I feel this new age education is actually playing a role at many levels in society.
Got it. So now, I'm trying to understand, like, what is the right way to really parent?
There is no rule book.
Huh.
I again say that in 99.9% of the cases, parents do know what is best for their children. Right? I think what is needed is the use of mentors and guides today
To augment that.
to augment that knowledge
Understood.
and give them the exposure and opportunity that they need to thrive.
Got it. Got it. So parents should trust their instincts, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Right? But they should also at the same time listen to their child
Yes.
and be sensitive to his or her feelings, his or her voices
Yes.
that sometimes may be ignored. Sometimes.
Yes. So let me give you an example. On a call, a parent locked his mom out of the call because he just didn't want her interfering in his conversation with me.
The child logged
The student, yeah. And I actually had to say that that's rude behavior and we must allow the mother back in. When the mother came back in, I also told her that please respect the time that we have together and, allow us to talk.
Communicate. Huh?
Later on in that same session, I asked the student, what is if I told you to make a YouTube video for your mom on any subject under the earth, what would you make? And you know what he answered? I would tell her, it's all going to be okay. I'm going to get a great admission and I'm going to be very successful in my life. So, in spite of his reaction of actually locking her out, his main aim is to tell her, I'm okay. I will be okay.
Wow. It's a great story. It's a great story. Makes a lot of sense. And then tell me about augmenting through Head Start or through a mentor, right? When should a parent feel the need to bring in a mentor?
I think the need for a mentor is constant in your life, honestly. If you're a learner, then it's constant. But looking at school children, why did I sort of choose, this age bracket?
Correct.
Middle school is when students start facing a lot of challenges. They start coming off their own. Today, kids are growing up faster mentally than they are chronologically. And that's the time when their sort of focus and growth gets started. That's a good point to bring in someone who's an external resource and who's on both your sides, who's understanding the parental viewpoint.
The bridge.
Yeah, who's also understanding what the student is looking for. At the same time, is helping the student work towards tangible deliverables, right? So, for example, if you're asking a student to attend a workshop to learn how to make a podcast, then the next time, in the next year or so, get them to actually make that podcast and host it. So they're excited about the innovation they're doing, they're excited about what they're learning, and at the same time, you're teaching them so many things. But then you are that checkpoint. You're the one who's giving them the deadlines, who's monitoring the growth. It doesn't become yet another battle in the many battles of between a parent and student.
And then, obviously this is time consuming, right? I mean, so how often do you end up meeting a student?
At Head Start, we meet with the student one-on-one 2 times a month.
Oh, okay.
And then we communicate on WhatsApp, so we're always available. And we have workshops that happen once a month. So it's constant contact.
And how do you see these children grow up differently from, let's say, the ones who perhaps don't enroll, and not in a Head Start, but generally who are not seeking mentorship or just sort of going their way as it is?
So it's not to say that if you're not with a program or a mentor, you're not going to be successful. But what happens is that the students who are working on a program or with someone who is looking out for their growth, they have a more structured path towards success. I'll give you an example. So a lot of students do a lot of MUNs, and that's a very popular choice for students. But if you look at the number of hours and the number of effort versus the recognition that an activity like an MUN gives you versus public speaking in a podcast or debating competitions or interview series that a student might do, right? All of which are working towards the same aim. The results are far stronger. So this is the kind of advice or sort of nurturing that a mentor or a program gives you versus a student who's going all out on their own.
At Masters Union, there is quite a lengthy application process that students have to go through, right? They have to first write a couple of essays.
Okay.
And now, because all essays can be easily written by ChatGPT,
Yes.
We have started taking video essays.
Yes.
Right? So you actually will get a prompt live, and then you have to respond to that prompt while on camera. Yes. And that we believe is a foolproof way, hopefully, to get students to actually think.
Yes.
And we are also able to understand how the student thinks, how they structure, how critically they analyze. In the second step, we actually call them to the campus and we have a group discussion, right?
Yes.
And then we have an interview. And then we also this year have added a scavenger hunt.
Okay.
So we put them in teams.
Yes.
And we give them certain clues.
Okay.
And they have to go hunt those clues, right? And at the end of that exercise, students actually have to vote on each other.
Okay.
As to who they want in the cohort.
Wow.
Right? So it's not even an exercise that we do.
Yes.
But the students do themselves to figure out who's going to actually be in the cohort.
Right.
Now, my fear with that always is that, like, are we putting too much pressure on the child? And then will the child now spend 6 months just preparing for this entire application process, right? It's already happening. I mean, college is so important and your application is so important. Do you see that to benefit the student? Like, do you think that is also a goal that the student takes ownership for? Or do you see that goal as like a frivolous vanity pursuit that eventually is going to make the student fragile?
No, I feel that, so this would work for us, this would work very well for a certain kind of student, right? But we have a mix of students. So there are some students who will write something, delete it, write something, delete it, write something, delete it, till they come to the fourth line that they think is perfect, right? Things like video interviews don't give that opportunity, right? Then they definitely need to prepare for it. But then while they are preparing for this video interview, they are also learning so many other skills along the way. So what they would have learned maybe just before an internship interview or a job interview.
That's happening much earlier.
It's happening much earlier today. And that is what has happened to industry also. Today, you don't need to have completed a circle of education to enter the industry.
Correct.
So why are we constantly talking about these new skills that students need? because they are exposed to the workforce, to industry much, much earlier than earlier generations were.
Okay, fair. So but I mean, again, where do you draw the line, right? It's good theoretically, but then when you obsess over it, you put so much pressure on the child. I've seen people break down. At least in my own school, when I was in school,
Yes.
there was such a focus on cracking Ivy Leagues and cracking LSE, and if you don't get in, then you're second grade, and that obsession sometimes was very toxic.
Yes.
Right? How do you draw the line?
That's a longer, deeper discussion. What really is success? What are the metrics of success? And why is it so important? So, actually, I'll tell you the conversation. So, the social conversation has actually shifted. It's no longer that my child has gotten to Harvard or UPenn. It's about my child has gotten to Harvard or UPenn, but is in a gap semester and is working on his startup.
So now that's become a bigger flex than
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, got
Right?
it.
So which
My
again-
child has a podcast which has X many viewers.
Yes.
Is a bigger flex now than going to LSE.
Maybe. So, what I'm saying is that's
But
why
you see that changing?
that's definitely changing.
Interesting.
That is definitely changing. Isn't that change what is making Masters Union successful? Tell me honestly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we prioritize work product over grades, right?
Yes.
But I think that's why Masters Union is also a very small college, right? And a very small percentage of the population actually appreciates what Masters Union is trying to do, right? We have, let's say, 5,000 applications for Masters Union, which is quite high, I understand. But at the same time, for JE, there are 15 lakh applications,
Yes.
So I think it's increasing, but it's still 1 or 2% of the audience.
Yeah.
And I hope that will continue to increase.
So this is where it's going back to what I said, that the mindset education needs to change not just for students but for parents as well.
As well. Yeah. I think this Shark Tank has done a good job, right?
Yes.
I think that has really glamorized entrepreneurship, and I think that's going to push. Now parents will be like, mera beta IIT gaya, but mera beta Shark Tank mein hai. So I feel
The narrative has changed.
narrative has changed a little bit. That I definitely see. Like I love the love that some of these podcasters in India are getting. Right?
Yes.
That even the Prime Minister called them on stage and facilitated them, right?
Yes.
Felicitated. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that is so heartening to see that it's not just about who went to IIT and who went to IIM, but also people who are doing an amazing. By the way, I'll tell you a very interesting metric.
Please.
This year, if you look at the Nifty 50 companies, right, there are more CEOs that did not go to IIT IIM than the ones who did.
Yeah.
And that has never been true in the last 50 years, but it's true today.
Exactly.
Which is so cool, right? Like colleges do not define success anymore.
There was a time that pedigree of your education was the only way doors opened.
Correct.
But the world, but the world has opened, right? And which is why today students need to learn different ways to function to be successful.
So how far do you think we are from no colleges? Or colleges not being like, important part of the loop, as you mentioned earlier?
I think colleges will always remain. I think they will also structure their learnings a little bit differently.
Colleges will change. They will remain, but they will change.
Yeah, I think with changing times, everything will evolve. So learning will also evolve. Education will also evolve. And already I feel that within the system, you see newer boards are introduced into the country. Now teachers are being trained to deliver those effectively. So things are happening. And honestly, looking at our population and looking at the metrics of what is happening in just basic education, that itself is mind-blowing.
Do you also work with teachers and school principals to help them think through all of these things?
So not yet, but yes, that is on the cards, because I think till the educationists don't come on board,
it's incomplete.
it's incomplete. The process is incomplete. But they are always in agreement. Every time you have a conversation with an academician, they are always in agreement with the thought process.
But I mean, even if they want to change, it's very hard for them to then get CBSE and ICSE to change their standards, right?
I know for a fact that authorities within the education department are actually listening with an ear to the ground. So it might take some time, but I'm sure change is around the corner.
Got it. And I know that we are also working on something now together. We have, our kids are slightly older.
Yes.
But I believe that you're working with the undergraduate team
Yes.
to create a very interesting program. Tell us more about that.
So that program is called Mastermind.
Mastermind.
Yes. And
Oh, I like okay, Masters Union.
yes. And that program is under an initiative called JBC that I also founded. It's called Journeys Beyond Classrooms. And the aim of that initiative is to collaborate on programs such as these, which allow for students to learn with a journey that's going to impact them in ways that is going to change their lives. So, this program is an entrepreneurial initiative that is being done by Masters Union for high school students across the country from grade 9 to grade 12. It's going to be both an online and an offline program because we want accessibility for all. And in the program, not only will you learn the core concepts of entrepreneurship, you will have a chance to draw up a business plan. You will have a chance to present it to mentors and VCs. And if selected in the top three,
Oh, very
your
nice.
idea is going to get nurtured at Masters Union.
Oh, very nice, very nice, and very interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
And do you see? I mean, we spoke about Shark Tank earlier.
Yes.
But do you see that like these entrepreneurial projects? For me, all of my learning happened when I built my first company. Right? I think I became a better speaker. I became a better manager. I became a better organizer of my own work. My structured thinking became more structured. My critical thinking became more critical. And I feel like an entrepreneurial project is a great holistic pursuit that grows you, that builds you up as a proper end-to-end individual. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's when your learning is put to use, when your knowledge is tested on the ground. And the thrill you get of setting up something and
Because
seeing
it's
it
gratification, yeah.
is immense.
When you get some revenue, or when someone
Yeah.
uses your product.
Absolutely. And students today, because of all the exposure that they have, you will be amazed at the level of ideas they can come up with.
Yeah, I can imagine. All the coolest companies are being founded by Gen Z, right? Everybody else is doing boring.
Yeah, but so like I said, because the entry barrier has gone beyond completing your educational cycle, has gone beyond an age limit. Today you have younger than 18 people who are setting up
Yeah, absolutely. Very good companies,
things,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Zepto,
So
I mean, such a good.
exactly. So some of the things that students should focus on today is 10x thinking.
What is that?
So 10x thinking is just thinking beyond. Beyond what you can imagine, think beyond that.
Give an example.
So, mind is a muscle. As much as you test it, is as much it will work. So, the input is the knowledge that I spoke about earlier. Expose yourself to as many things as you can. And that's when you will identify the gaps. And it is often said and proven now that those projects are successful. It's not when it's a great idea, it's when it's solving a need.
Okay.
So that's how it will work for a student's mind. Why do we do chemistry experiments in a lab versus just studying it in theory? It's when you see it happen. So these things like mastermind, etc., are those labs in which you're practicing your learning and your knowledge.
And your 10x thinking.
Thinking.
Yeah, thinking. Got it. I mean, 1x would be that, okay, I have to pass my exam.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But 10x is that, okay, with the skill that I have now learned in chemistry,
Yes.
can I really go on
Yeah.
and create a new version of Coca-Cola that has less sweet,
Yeah.
less sugar, but higher
Yeah.
sweetness? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something
Or
like that.
with the chemistry that I've learned, I know that a pair of jeans uses this much of water to get produced.
Correct.
Is
Okay.
there a better way to do it?
Do it.
My dad runs a chemical plant. Can I use the chemistry that I've learned to figure out ways to where that operationally I can make it more sustainable? Right? So those are the things that when you have a mentor, they ignite your mind to think about.
No, this has been a great masterclass on parenting.
Definitely a master conversation.
Conversation on parenting. I think we covered right in the beginning. We covered anti-fragility and bubble wrapping. I think those two words I'm not going to forget for a long time, and make sure that I'm never, at least, a culprit there. But I think also the entire conversation around how a mentor can really sort of help you get a head start, using your word
Thank
there,
you.
and then how parenthood can be a lot more measured, right? And how sometimes crossing the line children,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Intently and putting some trust in them. Then finally talking about 10x thinking as to how students can turn their academic work, which may not be as inspiring, to something more 10x, which can be more inspiring and hence more gratifying.
Absolutely.
And then finally, pursuing entrepreneurship as a great way to holistically build yourself, right?
Yes, because I think careers have changed also. Even if you're in a job, your mindset has to be entrepreneurial to succeed. And that's how, in fact,
That's
before we
true.
wrap up, I'm going to ask you what are the gaps that you see in the current schooling system versus what is needed for success today?
I think I'll tell you what the schooling system does well and then what it does not do well. From my perspective, what it really does well is train students to work hard, right? Which I don't see, let's say, in countries like the US, where if you make someone sit for 2 hours, they're going to move about, they're going to go to the bathroom, they're going to check their phone, they're going to do 10 other things, right? Be fully distracted. So then the Indian education system is very good with focus. The Indian education system is very good with memorization. And I know memorization is not looked at with a lot of favor in education systems, but I think memorization is important because it, as you said, it's about training the muscle of the mind, right?
Correct.
And Indians probably have the best academic memory that I've ever come across.
Yes.
We're so good at that.
Yes.
And I think that is important later in life. Memorizing facts, while not as important as critical thinking, it is important to keep your mind active. Now, what it does not do well, I think the Indian education system does not enable critical thinking because it does not allow our students to question the teachers or the content. We are told to believe the teacher. We are told not to question the teacher. We are told to read the book as a Bible, right? And believe whatever is told to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this questioning mindset, this critical thinking mindset. By the way, Bikram, your husband, I think he does that so well. He asks such pertinent questions. I'm such a fan of his critical thinking, to be honest, right? And I'd love to ask him where that muscle got built for him. But the Indian education system, questioning something is something we don't train them, and that becomes a problem later in life. And the other thing is, how do our students structurally solve problems, right? So when I give an Indian student a problem, he would try to attack that problem head on, right? Whereas if I were to give this problem to, let's say, a Finnish student or a Japanese student, and I have some of those friends, the way they would look at a problem is very different, right?
Yes.
They would look at the problem, they would analyze it, right? They will look at it from all directions,
Correct.
right? And then instead of attacking it head on, they will create a strategy that, okay, we'll attack it from the right, we'll attack it from the left, and when the other army is getting weaker, then we'll attack from the front, and by the way, we'll also have a backup just in case there is a fail safe.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel that strategic thinking is something that our education system lacks in creating in our students, whereas some of the other education systems do a great job, right? I think these two things would be my biggest pain points with the education system. Do you align with them?
Yes, I do. Actually, I completely agree with what you're saying. For a middle and a high school student who wants to be a really successful entrepreneur, what would be your top three things to?
No, I'll just say top. I won't even say top three. I'll just say top one.
Okay.
Which is just start anything, right? Even if it is a lemonade stand, right? The famous lemonade stand.
Yes.
To, taking tuitions for younger children,
Right.
Do anything that is part of a transaction, right? Where you're selling a service or a product and you're making some money, right? Doesn't have to be a big business, doesn't have to be an app, doesn't have to be a stock market, doesn't have to be all of that. Something as simple as, I'll tell you, one of my most successful students is a student who started a Golgappa chain. She runs this chain of Golgappa stores called Solgappa, right? And it's the simplest business out there,
Right.
But what she has done is she said, hey, the current Golgappa systems are very unhygienic.
Yes.
So I'm going to create a hygienic Subway-like Golgappa empire, right? And such a simple business. She just started her first cart in Gurgaon,
Right.
and now she's growing it, right? So don't wait for the best idea. Don't wait for VC funding. Don't wait for your app to get released. Just start anything, right? And to start a business does not require more than 1 or 2 days if it is a simple business. So start simple, and then over a period of time, you can keep adding frills to it. You can keep making it more complicated for yourself, and you can keep building that app and create a nice design. But day zero, just get started. Try to make your first 10 rupees, then get to your 100 rupees, then get to your 1,000 rupees, then get to your lakh rupees. But make that 10 rupees tomorrow, right? And that entrepreneur bug will bite you. And then once you have tasted that blood, you can never go back.
So I hope every high school, middle school student listening to this gets started on their venture today.
I think it's a great way to just grow up as a human being.
Yeah.
You get tested on discipline, you get tested on public speaking, you get tested on managing people, building content, right?
Yes.
How has your life changed since you started Head Start?
It's changed in so many ways. I've become a better listener. It's very dynamic to listen to all the students and see the ideas they've come up with. To have the first meeting with a student where they hang their head and say, I'm not interested in anything, to have them go on to win certificates at international competitions. That's so, when you visibly see a student bloom in front of you is the best feeling that you.
And what about as an entrepreneur? How have you evolved as an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, I've realized that to scale, not everything can be done yourself.
Fair.
And you have to constantly push yourself out of your comfort zone. So, this podcast, thanks to you, is my attempt to push myself out of my comfort zone.
You're doing a great job, by the way. It seems like I know this is your first on-camera podcast, but you're a natural. I have to tell you that.
Please delete this.
No. No, you're great. You're great, and it flew so nicely.
Wow.
It flowed so nicely. Sorry. And no, I thank you so much for having me and for being so open and being so candid in this discussion. No, I learned a lot, to be honest. My perspective towards parenting when I become a parent will definitely be different because of this conversation today.
Well, I really hope that someday soon. And thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.